If you want to stream live NFL games this season directly from NFL Game Pass to any computer, tablet, or device, all for $100 cheaper than NFL Sunday Ticket, stick around to the end of the show and I'll let this week's sponsor show you how. For the first time all year, the Green Bay Packers just got crushed. Despite going into Week 6 leading the NFL in points per game, yards per play, and being in the top 5 in virtually every other offensive statistic that you can think of, those dominant Packers that have been practically running over the league all season long got almost nothing done against Tampa Bay last weekend. And as I sat there watching that game and seeing the Packers start off so hot, putting up 10 points and 134 yards in the first quarter alone, only to then get completely shut out for the remaining 3 quarters en route to a massive 28-point loss, I thought to myself, how did this happen? And I don't just mean how did the Packers play so poorly, but rather what did the Buccaneers adjust in their game plan to make them start playing so poorly? What did Bucs defensive coordinator Todd Bowles actually change about his play calling? And perhaps most importantly, could other teams do the same thing in the future? The answer may actually surprise you, but before we get into what worked well for Tampa, you first have to understand what was not working well for them early in that game. In the first quarter, Bowles clearly wanted to test Green Bay's depleted weapons with man coverage looks. He wanted to see just how well these guys could separate against his DBs, but he quickly found out that man coverage was not going to work well for him against the Packers, who were keen to just call endless crossing routes to scheme up separation for their receivers no matter how depleted they were. And he also found out the hard way, fairly early on, that Davante Adams was more than healthy enough to beat his corners one-on-one. So, in just that first quarter alone, on all 5 man coverage calls from Bowles, Aaron Rodgers completed all 5 pass attempts for 57 yards, out of just over 100 yards passing total. And as I mentioned earlier, he led 2 back-to-back scoring drives that put them up 10-0. Suffice to say that if Bowles continued to rely on that man coverage, Rodgers probably would have carved him up all day long, and this game would have gone way differently. However, calling man coverage wasn't the only problem, because Tampa also had some troubles with zone coverages too, particularly on zone coverages that only featured a 4-man rush up front. You see, Green Bay really likes to call 6- and 7-man pass protections and block things up long enough to attack deep down the field. That's just their style. And when you call a 4-man rush against a 6-man pass protection scheme, especially against a mobile quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you tend to be 1 man short when it comes to plugging up all the lanes of escape from the pocket. Rodgers has phenomenal pocket feel and can find those lanes of escape and buy time to manipulate zone coverages, no matter how many people you actually drop back into those coverages, and so you can see how that creates problems for a defense even if it's technically making a good play call. Bowles couldn't keep Rodgers from escaping the pocket and making throws on the run against his zones with only 4 rushers, and because of that, Green Bay was able to convert on several long yardage situations early in the game. So, when you put all of those struggles together, not being able to play effective man coverage, and not being able to effectively rush the passer with only 4 guys, it paints a pretty bleak picture for any defense. But Todd Bowles had one more trick up his sleeve that he tried out in the second quarter, and it worked so well that he just kept doing it over and over for the rest of the game. Pressure. Constant, aggressive, unrelenting pressure. It didn't matter if it was a 1st and 10 or a 3rd and 3. It didn't matter if it was a running situation or a passing situation. If Todd Bowles had an opportunity to bring at least 5 guys to penetrate into the backfield, he was going to do it. In particular, he was really fond of blitzing his nickel corner, Sean Murphy-Bunting, to create pressure against both the run and the pass game for Green Bay. Take this 2nd and 4 situation as an example. The Packers are in a 2-back set with both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams on the field, which is a package they run a lot, and Bowles responded to it by calling a blitz that some coaches refer to as Seattle. A Seattle blitz is a 5-man pressure package that brings all 4 defensive linemen as well as the nickel corner or the Sam linebacker, whoever happens to be on the field depending on the personnel package of course, and it works great on early downs as a run blitz because at worst it completely clogs up the strong side D gap and allows for the Mike linebacker, Levante David, to run through clean to the edge and make a play, or in a best case scenario, if it's a passing play instead, the fact that you have a blitzer getting picked up 5 yards deep in the backfield by the worst pass protector on the field, the running back, that tends to make quarterbacks nervous. They don't like when they have a rusher 5 or 6 yards deep already by the time they finish their drop. It really makes them uncomfortable and speeds up their internal clock. And you can see here that as Rodgers was stepping up into the pocket, fully aware that he had a rusher about to come up from behind him, he knew that he had no really good lanes of escape to buy time and wait for Davante Adams to cross the face of the safety deep down the field. And he definitely felt like he didn't have enough time to reset and find Jones wide open in the flat either. So he decided to just check it down to Marcedes Lewis, who dropped the pass anyway. This was a great example of pressure speeding up Rodgers' internal clock and not really allowing him to fully read the coverage or find open receivers against zone. Pressure makes any quarterback nervous and rush themselves into mistakes, even ones as good as Rodgers, and so because Bowles recognized that bringing at least 5 rushers regardless of down and distance was the only way to slow down this Green Bay offense, he just kept doing it over and over again. There was a 3rd and 10 situation a bit earlier in the game when it was still relatively close. Tampa was only up 14-10 at the time, and Bowles dialed up yet another zone blitz out of a double mug alignment. Once more, just that extra added body coming free into the backfield. Again, this time it was Sean Murphy-Bunting. That made Rodgers speed up his process, and he didn't have time to manipulate those underneath zone defenders out of the way to open up Malik Taylor over the middle. So he just threw the ball away, and the Packers had to punt. And remember, this was only a 5-man pressure package against a 7-man pass protection, and they still got a rusher free into the backfield to make Aaron uncomfortable. It's all about design. With a guy like Rodgers, it's very hard to disrupt him with just 4 rushers if they're keeping a tight end and a running back in to help protect, so you've got to heat him up with extra bodies. But more importantly, you've got to bring extra bodies in a creative way that he doesn't see coming. Take this sack from later in the second quarter as an example. This is a perfect case of getting pressure with a creative blitz package. In fact, it's so creative that I don't exactly know what to call this front. I've looked through all of my playbooks from guys like Nick Saban, Dave Aranda, Brent Venables, Mike Pettin, Don Brown. From what I can tell, none of them have this in there. It's basically a 5-1, except both of the edge rushers are actually inside linebackers, Levante David and Devin White, and the Mike linebacker is actually Shaq Barrett, who is normally Tampa's best edge rusher. And Bowles lines them up like this because he wanted to force the Packers into a full slide in pass protection. If Green Bay went into a 6-man fan protection, that would have put the running back one-on-one with Barrett coming up the gut, and Rodgers obviously didn't want that, so he had a choice to either go with a full slide protection to the left and put Jamal Williams one-on-one with Devin White, or go with a full slide protection to the right and put Williams one-on-one with Levante David. Either way, there's a winnable one-on-one there because Bowles always wants to attack the running back in protection rather than trying to cover him as a receiver. Plus, even if the Packers did release the running back as a receiver out of the backfield, these fast and fluid inside linebackers are far more equipped to play a peel technique and cover him than, say, Shaq Barrett or Jason Pierre-Paul would be. So that's the gist of why Bowles called this front. It gives them the best of both worlds in terms of matchups in pass protection and matchups in coverage, which of course worked well enough to get the sack here. The line slid right, Williams tried to step up and then adjust to Levante screaming off the edge like a bat out of hell, but he just couldn't get there in time and David ran right through him to take down Rodgers for an 11-yard loss. This sack is exactly why game planning and adjusting on the fly are so important. Todd Bowles knew what Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers like to do in the passing game, especially with their protections and route concepts. He knew what their comfort zones were, and he relentlessly, brutally took those comfort zones away with pressure. I'm not saying that the Packers cannot adjust their own tendencies as well to handle pressure better in the future, but there is clearly a blueprint here for success against this Green Bay offense. The only question I have now, though, is what other teams in the NFC can actually pull this style of defense off? Who else has the incredible speed at linebacker like Tampa does? Who else has disciplined, tough, and smart DBs that don't lose track of their assignments in zone coverage? Who else has an edge rushing duo like Shaq Barrett and JPP that can win one-on-ones consistently? And of course, who else has a mad scientist as their coordinator that has the balls to blitz Aaron Rodgers that often? Honestly, there's not a whole lot of teams in the NFL that fit that description. Tampa is, well, unique in that way. But their unique success against Green Bay helps to illustrate a larger point. Matchups and game plans are important. The Packers couldn't beat the Bucks couldn't beat the Bears couldn't beat the Colts, and the Colts, well, they were holding on for dear life against the Bengals of all teams. Matchups matter, and that's why on any given Sunday you can see the Packers put up 40, or you can see them put up 10. You never really know what's going to happen out there on the field, and so I urge you, if you're a Packers fan, don't panic just yet. And if you're a Bucs fan, just enjoy the moment, because if and when these teams meet again in January, and trust me, I believe they will, this one-of-a-kind matchup might look like an entirely different game. Thank you for watching this week's episode, and also thank you to this week's sponsor, NordVPN. If you're like me and you cut the cord many years ago, the most difficult part about that decision has always been finding a way to stream live NFL games. But with NordVPN, it's now easier than ever to do so legally. All you have to do is download NordVPN, select a server somewhere in Europe, I tend to do Germany myself, and then once you connect to that European server, that will allow you to also purchase a subscription to NFL's Game Pass streaming service, which is the service that I use to make these episodes every single week. In the American version of Game Pass, which I also own separately, you do not get access to live streaming of NFL games. But in the European one, because of the difference in licensing agreements, you do actually get access to every single regular and postseason game, and the Super Bowl, and it's $100 cheaper than NFL Sunday Ticket would be on top of an existing DirecTV subscription. Plus, it also comes with all of the normal NFL Game Pass features as well, like NFL Network Live 24/7, the All-22 Coaches tape that you see in all of these episodes, full game replays and highlights for games going back the entire last decade, and tons of NFL films and NFL Network programming like America's Game and A Football Life. NFL Game Pass streaming on NordVPN is by far the best way to stream live NFL content, plus the league still gets paid too through that Game Pass subscription, so it's not even pirating. It's all completely legal and everybody wins, especially you, the football fan. If you're interested in upgrading your game watching setup this season and you want to try this out, you can get 68% off a 2-year plan for NordVPN. That makes it less than $4 a month. Plus, you get an additional month free at nordvpn.com/BrettKollmann2 or by using my promo code BrettKollmann2 at checkout. Again, thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this week's show and for giving all of us a better option to stream some live NFL games this season. As for me and channel news, I've got yet another episode coming out next week, probably Thursday or Friday. Not entirely sure what it's going to be on, but there's a lot of really great games to choose from this weekend, so I'll see what happens and I'll go from there. So until then, later.